This project and congestion pricing are part of an emerging story, which is the MTA, the new MTA is planning and executing and getting results for customers. Nobody thought this project was going to be delivered on the schedule we saw at Grand Central Madison 2 years ago, and it was done. 40 people said, you're never going to get 40% of Long Island Railroad customers to come here, and now they are. And this project, this facility just won a prize for some very elite cultural snobs in Europe. The Prix Versailles is the most beautiful train station. And likewise, congestion pricing is another story about the MTA's capacity in this era to plan and execute and deliver for customers. So what do we have after 6 weeks or so of congestion pricing? Less traffic, faster travel, safer streets, and most of all, a lot of people who thought they were against congestion pricing saying, we love it, you got to keep it. We're winning over the naysayers. So that, I think, is the story. And of course, we were thrilled to have the governor join us for both to celebrate Kathy Rinaldi, an amazing public servant, but also to talk about that record of delivering for the public that we are starting to build up. So with that, Tim?
All right, first question today is Andrew Siff of WNBC. Andrew.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask about the governor's remarks and your remarks with regard to President Trump. She's talking about pissed off New Yorkers and a resistance, and we're not going to stand for it. And you took a different approach, which is appealing to Mr. Trump as a businessman, pointing out that commercial real estate values are up. I'm just wondering if that good cop, bad cop approach is something that you talked about with the governor, or it's that you're not as comfortable making it sound like an attack.
Remember, Andrew, when we once turned down opportunities to psychoanalyze ourselves and everybody else? I think you might be verging on that. Listen, what's happening is those are two sides of the same coin. We are talking about specific results that we can show from congestion pricing: faster travel, safer streets, less time wasted in traffic, happy drivers. And the governor's also, what the governor's reflecting, and which I support, is the frustration that we have when we're hearing from Washington. And the Secretary of Transportation, in his first public statement, said, I'm for cutting people's commute times. I'm for user fee funded solutions. I'm for local control. Congestion pricing meets all those standards. So it is frustrating for a governor who is trying to support innovative local solutions to be faced with a Washington that's renouncing its own principles in order to attack congestion pricing. I mean, let's just remember, there was an episode where a guy from Barstool Sports, which is hardly, it's hardly aligned with, Streets blog on a day-to-day basis. But Barstool Sports commentators said, this isn't a left-right issue. This is just a practical issue. New Yorkers don't want to be stuck in traffic. That was kind of a voice for a lot of New Yorkers. I think the governor's comments today reflected that point of view.
All right, he got name checked. Dave Colon, Streets blog. We go right to you. Here's a microphone.
Derek Jeter in that commercial where he keeps losing control of the mic, yeah.
To what, the astronaut or something? No, the insurance guy. So I wanted to also go back to the governor, Jano. She's made a face turn. She's pro-congestion pricing now. You guys are appearing together at board meetings again. You're talking about her as a leader in Albany on transit. But we all kind of forgot it in the whole mess over this new Trump thing. But the capital plan still seems to be going nowhere. The governor had nothing to say about it in her 30-day budget amendments. It seems like it's still being left up to the legislature, but the governor still leads the budget dance. So what can you tell us about your conversations with her, about your conversations with legislators, I guess, since apparently it's on them to fund this plan, about where this is and like who's being the responsible adult in the room up there?
Listen, I understand your skepticism because most of the important budget discussions are taking place in private settings. It's no secret that the decisions about the budget are made in negotiations between the executive and the two houses of the legislature, and that's just the reality of how it works. I can tell you how I feel, which is incredibly optimistic. Why? Because I think that based on my conversations with the legislature, everybody gets the urgency of investing in this basic state of good repair elements: power, structure, signals, new trains, and that if we don't do it, we're letting the system fall apart, and that's going to hurt the riders. So we have made that case with the 20-year needs assessment and otherwise, and I know that the leaders in both houses of the legislature get it. That's what makes me optimistic. The other thing that I know that they get and the governor gets is what you heard today from Jamie Torres Springer, that the MTA has really turned a corner in how we manage capital projects so that we can assure the public and as well as our partners in Albany that we are doing things in a cost-efficient and innovative way. The project that we opened this week that many of you saw opening, the Flushing Passage connection, was part of that story. But Jamie gave a really thorough presentation. That also gives me a lot of confidence about what's going to happen in the final budget negotiations.
At the end of the day, is she the one who has to get this over the line since she's the governor and she does the budget?
It used to be called 3 men in a room. It's 3 people in a room now. It has all 3 partners have to deliver for the 90% of folks who come to their jobs in the central business district relying on transit. And all those folks who are using transit just to live their lives, to go to medical appointments, to go to school, to go to go to theater, whatever, they're depending on Albany to deliver an MTA capital program that does not leave us in a worse position in 5 years than we are right now.
All right, next up from the Hudson Square Pavilion, Newton Jones Burkett III of Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Every time. And it makes the transcript every time. Mr. Lieber, I'd like to follow up on your answer to Andrew's question. As you're probably aware, Mayor Adams has taken a largely non-confrontational approach to dealing with the Trump administration, at least rhetorically. Your governor is taking a different approach. A, I'm wondering, what you make of that approach rhetorically, and B, how you think it helps MTA.
Listen, the bottom line is the governor has had 2 conversations with the president and then went to his office in person and pitched him. She is doing it both with fact-based approach, and you saw that in the presentation she shared, which has been made public some time ago, and she's also doing it by emphasizing the way that congestion relief actually aligns with the principles that he has enunciated: local control, innovation in government, in some cases user fee-funded infrastructure, which has been a priority of the Republican Party for many years. So I think that she's making a case in every possible way, and she's making the case to him as a New Yorker. The mayor's position is that he just heard about congestion pricing and he's not sure that he has a role, but the important thing is that his appointees on the board supported it and the DOT of the City of New York supports it, and those are our partners and we're depending on them.
Yeah, if I could just follow up real quick. The mayor last week told me, I asked him about the governor's approach, and he said, look, I'm not going to yell and scream just because it makes me feel good.
I don't think the governor is doing anything like that. I think the governor's making a forceful case for congestion pricing, which is actually supported by 2/3 of the people who are driving into the CBD. We've won over the naysayers. She speaks for all New Yorkers who ride transit and who are happy to have faster commutes and drive, whether they're driving or taking transit. So I think she's making a forceful case as an effective governor should.
All right, Arthur Chen, Fox 5 right there. Arthur?
Thank you, Tim. Chairman Lieber, Mayor Adams was on our morning show this morning, getting into the substance of what he said. He said he won't call this a win or a loss when talking about congestion pricing, that he wants to study it more, in particular its impact on the economy and on traffic. Is he missing something? Is there any data you'd like to offer?
No, I mean, I think you probably heard the same data that we have about the impact on traffic. Traffic congestion is way down. Everybody is traveling much faster in the central business district, drivers and bus commuters together, safer streets. All those benefits are well known. Does that mean we won't keep studying it? Absolutely. We are going to study the heck out of it. That is part of the plan that we agreed to with the federal government that was approved. And there's nothing that you described, I didn't see the mayor's interview, that I would disagree with. I think those are all things that we're prepared to do and also to engage with the city on.
All right, let's move on to Steve Nesson. He's right back there from WNYC. That's New York's public radio, everybody. Steve.
Hello. just to follow up on the Hochul Trump stuff. I know Hochul said she wants an orderly resistance, but the federal government said they want an orderly cessation. So to that end, have you received more information or had any meetings with the DOT on winding down congestion pricing?
Well, it's not a secret. They subsequent to the letter where they said, the original letter where they said orderly cessation, there was another letter that followed which said to wind it up by, I think it's March 21st. Yes. That came like 3 days later. I guess they changed their mind in that 3-day period. But the important thing is there's going to be no cessation unless a court orders it, and we now have a matter pending in front of the Southern District where, as they say in the sports business, batting 1,000 with all the lawsuits, and we're very, very optimistic about where this next one is headed.
All right, let's go to a man who follows all the letters and nuances right there, Ry Rivard from Politico. That is what they do. We'll get your microphone, Ry.
Another question about the strategy. Today it seemed like the governor was going for congestion trolling. Can you talk a little bit about the taunting of the president and whether that's sort of going to work?
I don't think she was taunting anyone. I think she's speaking forcefully for New Yorkers who are telling us in polls and in anecdotes and just based on the data that congestion pricing is a success. It meets every stated goal of the federal government, both the Biden-era federal government and even the current federal government. As I said, the Secretary of Transportation said his goals, top of his list was cutting people's commute times, user fee funded innovative strategies, local control, and it meets that test as well. So I think you heard a forceful statement for a governor who's sticking up for New Yorkers on their right to solve uniquely New York problems. And we've already proven that they're being solved. I mean, it is not, it's not lost on anybody that this program is a success beyond even optimistic expectations already today.
All right, Samantha Liebman's here from New York One right there. Sam?
Hi, Jano. Were you trying to send a message, or was there any symbolism in holding the board meeting here today to President Trump, to leaders in Albany?
I think the message is, why not? I'm sure that many of you missed the fine dining at our vending machines in the room that you're provided to put your gear in. But listen, I don't think it's ever bad to sort of get out of the house and shake things up a little bit. There was no particular message. I was thrilled to be able to celebrate Kathy Rinaldi's departure in the one facility that connects Metro North and Long Island Railroad, which she led, and in this facility, which she ran Long Island Railroad in the preparation and the opening for this facility.
But you did remark how this was, the gateway project of New York. So maybe you can talk about that. I mean, are you trying to say that to Trump, that we can do big things if given the chance?
I'm not. There's no message to anybody in particular. That I'm really proud of the fact that, and it's overlooked in some of the coverage, to be honest, that everyone is focused on Gateway for New Jersey. Why do they need it? They need it because they need more capacity across the river for NJT and Amtrak riders, and they need a second way on and off Manhattan Island. And we already got that for folks who live on Long Island and in Queens with this project, which was extremely imperfect, but in the end we delivered it, and it has been a great success with the riders. 95% customer satisfaction for this facility and the service that was being provided.
All right, we move on to Stefanos Chen of the New York Times.
Hi, Jano. Just back on the point of March 21st being mentioned in some of the legal papers, is that no longer the case that DOT is demanding that the 21st is when the cameras must be shut off?
No, to the contrary. Their original letter did not specify a date, and they said, we'd like to talk about an orderly cessation. I think that was the terminology. Subsequently, they sent another letter and said, scratch that. We want you to turn them off by March 21st. Obviously, I mean, we've been clear, we're not turning them off. We have an approval that is valid and in effect, and we're not turning them off absent a court order. So in the meantime, everything is steady as she goes.
Could you speak briefly just on the legal strategy going forward?
Well, the legal strategy is laid out. It's not complicated. It's
I mean,
laid
the Southern District, that is, yeah.
Yeah, well, the legal strategy is not complicated. It's laid out in our papers. It's very clear. The broad argument is you cannot turn off an approval by the federal government absent a process which explains why the approval was wrong in the first place. And more specifically, that the program that we were granted the approval under has a specific termination process outlined with multiple different scenarios. Not one of those scenarios is a unilateral termination by the federal government, and the only unilateral termination can come from the recipient, the applicant entity, which is us, and along with the state and city DOTs. So we think it's a pretty open and shut argument, but obviously it's the courts, so we'll have to wait and see.
All right, we continue with Haley Brown, representing the New York Post.
Hi, so the MTA canceled a program for kids with autism to record public announcements. The kids and their parents are very upset. What gives?
Okay, so number one, we run autism programs year-round, not just once a year. We especially have a lot of programs in the month of April, and there was confusion because the one outfit that you're taking that commentary from was under misapprehension that we were going to have an exclusive relationship with them. They're a private school. We're working with public schools that serve this population, a special needs population. And so the misunderstanding has been cleared up, and we're going to continue to do a lot of programs with that population. Shanifa Riera is our customer service chief officer. Let her
go
speak
ahead.
to you.
And I just want to clarify it. I mean, and many of us that work on the project for Autism Accepting Months really took offense to the depiction in which that article was written. We are committed to highlighting this community. As the chairman said, we do lots of programming and events across, throughout the year, not only for children, but for adults. And we have continued to do so. If you followed us on Twitter or come to our events, we use the 10,000 digital screens to highlight Autism Acceptance Month, as well as lighting many of our high traffic terminal blue to bring awareness to our customers and everyone across the city.
So you're saying the program's still going?
Our autism program was ongoing. It existed long ago, and it continues.
And
All
it
right.
just ended with
No.
that
I
one?
think we're asked and answered there, Haley. Let's go over to the man who came from the east to the west today, Alfonso Castillo of Newsday.
How was the service?
Very good. I
Alfonso?
appreciate the simplified commute. Thank you. I'm able to track my train while we sit here. So on the subject of Grand Central
Use the app.
Madison, you've talked in the past how East Side Access, as it was known, was the model of how not to build in the MTA. Here we are 2 years later, $11 billion plus. Sort of looking back, can you talk about whether it was worth the money and the time, and now that the novelty's kind of worn off, what other lessons could be learned from the construction?
Well, I think I said this a couple days ago that the time savings that people from enabling us to run 40% more trains, to serve more customers, to save people on average who might have gone to Penn and were headed for East Midtown 40 minutes a day, that the value of people's time adds up really quickly. So that's billions and billions of dollars of time value saved. I haven't done the math myself, but I'm confident that the project's worth it, especially to the 95% of Grand Central Madison commuters who are saying we're happy with this, which is not shocking you, Alfonso. You're frequently pointing out some of the shortcomings of Long Island Railroad service, if there are. That's higher than we normally get. So you got a lot of happy commuters who are saving a lot of time, and you're allowing Long Island's people who live on Long Island to have ready access to the highest paid jobs in the United States, which is in this East Midtown district. And you're contributing to the growth of New York City's economy, because as we hear from the local BID, the Grand Central Partnership, there's a lot more foot traffic from Long Islanders in this area who are spending money and shopping and so on. So real benefits. But what did we learn? I think I'm going to short circuit the question by saying all that stuff you heard from Jamie today reflect the learnings of how that this project, this mega project went back. You have to plan much more. When Grand Central Madison began, I don't want to give a thesis, but when Grand Central Madison began, they did not even know where they were going to create a tunnel. They didn't know where they were going to bring it in, and there's enormous confusion and delay and cost associated with an unplanned project that had to be properly planned. When I inherited, I found out there were consultants who had been on the project for 10 years who had no structured financial incentive to get the project done, who were just getting paid, and their companies were getting paid when it went longer. And they were the ones in charge of the schedule. The schedule itself was insufficiently detailed. This is, a project management thing, but we went from like 5,000 or 6,000 activities to 45,000 activities, and that's how you make sure you know every step of the way and don't let a project get off schedule. There was excessive customization. There was not the proper coordination operationally with the railroad, so you made sure that you get all your construction activities done. And you were spending a ton of money for a plan to drag every piece of equipment, every piece of materials in from Queens. Unlike today, when Jamie described a project that they saved a ton of money by figuring out how to dig a hole and bring the materials right into where you needed them in an underground job site. So it goes on and on and on. We could have a very long conversation about it. This was the broken project. 4 governors didn't get it done. In fairness to Kathy Hochul, we got it done on her watch.
All right, we move on to Elijah Westbrook there from CBS New York. They dropped the 2, right? It's now just CBS New York.
CBS News New York.
We don't say numbers anymore. All
No
right,
numbers.
Elijah.
Hi, Jeno. Can you talk more about the safety feature that's being implemented on buses that will keep the driver sort of protected in this so-called cockpit? I know it was something that was looked into, was talked about during the committee meetings on Monday. When can we see that roll out on some of the newer buses, and will the buses currently be retrofitted?
So all the new buses are going to have it. We designed it in state-of-the-art design for a cockpit that protects the bus driver. It was designed in tandem with the union. Every bus that we buy is going to have it. In the meantime, we've installed these partitions to protect the bus driver from, people lashing out or touching them or throwing stuff at them. And that's had some effect. We are down in terms of employee assaults. It is still a very big problem, and we want the criminal justice system to punish people more seriously, for there to be more serious consequences. If you put a hand on an MTA employee, it's a felony, and we want the criminal justice system to start treating it like the law says. Frank, anything you want to add? No? Tim, do you want me to add anything else?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. Your answers are wonderful as always. Let's go to Jose Martinez, the city, standing right there. Jose.
Hi there, Jano. 2 quick questions. First of all, after Governor Hochul paused congestion pricing back over the summer, there was a recalibrating of the capital plan that followed that at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Is there going to be anything like that for this one if the funding doesn't come through? And my second question is, are you now a regular Barstool Sports guy?
I confess the Barstool Sports episode was pointed out to me. It's not on my regular news diet. But no, we're moving full steam ahead on the 2nd Avenue subway Phase 2, on the Fulton CBTC project, on the ADA projects, and on other projects funded by congestion pricing. Because the thing is, it's in effect. 2, we're already starting to move, albeit slowly, towards borrowing and using it as a security for our borrowing. And 3, we are very confident that it's going to sustain whatever new legal situations develop.
All right, Ralph Spielman is right there representing the constellation of Strauss newspapers. Ralph.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Lieber. Unfortunately, I was not very good at math, and perhaps you can express some information on this. On November the 14th, when the original congestion pricing idea of the $9 2.25 fares were done, the figure that had come out, I believe, was $600 million. It would bring in $600 million a year. And now it looks like it's closer to $500 million. And also, I believe the projection was that the number of cars would be cut by 13%. And it looks like forgive me if I'm making a mistake here, that it was actually 7.5%. So will there be some recalibration of these figures?
Okay, so the actual number is 10%, Ralph. So for the time, Jay, and I'm going to let Jay Patel speak to the revenue numbers. Jay.
Thank you, Chair. Our November financial plan had $500 million built into the budget, so I'm not sure what the 600 and where you're getting it from. We have 500 built in for the first 3 years of the program.
All right, let's move on to Michelle Kasky, speaking of numbers and finance, from Bloomberg News. Michelle.
Hi, Jano. Hey. So you've already borrowed $900 million. That's backed by congestion pricing revenue. Yeah, backed by meaning, look, this is what we intend to use to repay this loan. And then also, the board today authorized the MTA to start looking into bank loans, given that you got to wait a year before you can sell the actual congestion pricing bonds. My point is, in a worst case scenario, how much can you keep borrowing before you have to stop? Because in a worst case scenario, the MTA would need to, among its various revenue sources, repay what you've already borrowed.
Okay, I'm going to let the Chief Financial Officer answer that without getting too deep into hypotheticals, which is not our business. Go ahead.
Thanks. So we're keeping moving forward on funding the projects, because we're confident on congestion pricing revenue. So we will keep borrowing this year as needed to fund the project. So I don't have an exact number for you, but we're
right. But you've already put yourself out and MTA has already put itself out $900 million, and you've got your January collections. That obviously January alone doesn't repay the whole $900 million. I guess my whole point is, if something happens where unfortunately for the MTA's finances, congestion pricing no longer exists, and you have to then use other revenue to repay. At some point, you can only extend yourself so far.
Right. Well, of the 900, 400 was to pay for the cost to install the system, so that was critical, and then 500 is available for the first spending of projects, and we're looking possibly to borrow another 500 million in the near term through the term loan. So we're going to keep seeing. But we're planning to. I think Jamie walked through the commitment schedule for 2025, and we're going to keep funding that with all our sources.
Okay, I mean, just one thing is just make sure we're clear what we're talking about here. We've been hearing a lot about the concern that the federal government is about to tear away funding for Medicaid and say, states, you deal with it. That's what the hypothetical that you're playing with is. If the federal government tears away funding and says, you deal with it, you put it on your taxpayers. And we don't think it's going to happen, but it's very analogous to what people are concerned may be happening at the federal level, which is, sticking the local and the state taxpayer with the price of keeping basic functions going, transit, healthcare funding. It's kind of basic stuff.
All right, just a couple more. Stick around, Kevin Willens, because we're going to bond buyer right there, Christina Baker.
I'm
Anytime you
taking a
get
hike.
bond in the name, you never know. All right, Christina.
Yeah, I guess piggybacking on what you just said, there's federal uncertainty around congestion pricing and around, I guess, rescinding grants in general. Clearly it hasn't factored into your borrowing yet, but what might change about your borrowing strategies and approach to
I hate to
bonds?
play, Art Lickletter in Jeopardy, but could you rephrase the question, like the might part of it? Well, we have our strategy is how we're funding the MTA capital program. with a moderate level of debt, no more than 15%, that everybody seems to agree is where you start putting pressure on the operating budget. If the federal government decides to tear away money, even though New York City is the engine of the state, local, and national economy, that has consequences nationally and otherwise. And we're not going to start to plan for them to do something that we think would be self-defeating for the United States.
I guess, so you're not factoring currently, you're not looking at like, we might need to plug this gap with bonds. That's not how you're approaching your borrowing schedule.
So what happens is if somebody sticks the locals with more borrowing obligation, that ends up on the operating budget. And the only way you can balance the operating budget in that situation is to actually have fewer people working at the MTA and or cut service or increase fares. Those are not attractive options, and we are not planning to do any of those. So that's our view: is don't stick it on the taxpayers, don't stick it on the MTA riders, and don't force us to cut service by sticking the financial obligation for the capital program on the operating budget.
All right, down to the last couple. We got Greg Mocker here from Pix 11 News.
Greetings, Chairman. On the topic of ridership, we're still below pre-pandemic levels. How would you characterize these increases? I think you said the express bus ones were hefty.
Yeah.
And what kind of system are people coming back to? Are you at the point where we're looking at schedule changes, congestion pricing playing into some of the bus stuff, but subways, trains?
Yeah,
what
I mean,
kind of system?
this is one of the things that I would actually appeal to all of you to try to do a little better job of sharing with your readers and viewers, which is we have room in the mass transit system. We're still well below the exact levels that we were at before COVID. Now, that's not a bad thing. We all like a little more room at 8 a.m. on the subway, but there is room. There is not we are not seeing on the Long Island Railroad, I think, where's Rob? We get like less than a dozen trains a week that are at the 90% of capacity level. So we're running a service that is working really well, and there is not a capacity challenge that we're yet faced. But we're ready, and we love running more service. So if we reach that point, we will definitely be taking action to expand it further.
All right, so we wrap up the proceedings today with Julia Joseph of News 12. Oh, special appearance by Rob Free, everybody.
Well, yeah, it's 1% of trains hit 90% on the Long Island Railroad.
Rob Free, your host
Yeah.
at Grand Central Madison. But back to Julia Joseph.
All right, I'm ready.
You have a fan club there, a fan club. And Evan will get his question. He will get his question. Well, okay, we're starting to wrap up with Julia Joseph at
Thank you.
News 12 Brooklyn right there, Julia.
Mr. Lieber, my question to you on this congestion pricing, the Trump administration trying to roll back the plan. Do you think that this is an abuse of federal power that they are doing?
I wouldn't call it an abuse. I think that, as the governor said today, what doesn't make sense to New Yorkers is we've crafted a local solution that works well for New York: faster travel, less congestion, cleaner air, safer streets, and people like it. Why would the federal government take away that power, both for political reasons, policy reasons, and also the principle of local control? Governor sticking up energetically for New Yorkers.
All right, now we do go to Evan Simcoe Bednarski of the New York Daily News. Evan.
And his agent, Mr.
Thanks,
Colon.
Dave. Thanks, Dave. General, I've got a question about security on subway trains in layup and yards.
Yeah.
There have been a couple of high-profile instances. I know over the weekend there was an incursion at the yard in Jerome Street up in the Bronx. What is New York City Transit doing about this? Absent, I know there have been conversations about what you can do in the long term with new car procurements. But what are you guys able to do right now to kind of keep this
I'm
from
going to ask
happening?
Demetrius to come up and answer your question.
Thanks, Evan. So the first thing is we have a number of employees at a number of different locations. So the first thing that we did was raise alert to what was going on, put out a bulletin to all employees challenge someone who doesn't have their past displayed when entering properties. Always be on the lookout for what could be happening or transpiring. We actually looked at the specific scenario where the individuals access the tracks. We had our engineering team put together a quick fix which essentially alerts the tower team, tower operator or dispatcher, to when there is an unauthorized move that's taking place in the yard. So it will be an alarm that sounds. The crews, the team will definitely be alerted to what's been going on. But I think the reality is, since that time, the team has been actively engaged in watching, talking, communicating, and we're looking at other solutions on the tracks themselves, which could prevent further movement as well.
Can I just add one thing? Sure. The criminal justice system has a role to play in here. One of the people, I think it's a juvenile who engaged in this, had done it before, I think a matter of a week or two before. The criminal justice system needs to find a way to deal with the real issue we've got of most subway crime is committed by recidivists, by people who've done it much more than once or twice. That we got a lot of people who have gotten in the habit of doing something in the subway system and getting arrested, and then they're back at it. So I'm not a criminal justice expert, as I always say, but someone needs to find a way to make sure the recidivist subway criminals have faced consequences that protect the public.
All right, thank you, Jano. Demetrius, whoa,
Sorry,
we
quick-
have a
quick-
follow-up.
Yeah, quick follow-up. Can you help explain to my readers sort of what's at stake here? Because, you know, you've got kids allegedly getting onto trains on layup tracks. You know, there are general orders that happen overnight. You know, I think, you know, my sense is that some folks see this as simple vandalism, but other folks who talk to me say that there's some real safety issues here. Can you speak to that?
So we have a whole workplace for track safety program for making sure that employees are safe when they're on the tracks. When a person is operating a train that is unauthorized, it does call into question how safely our employees can be working on the track. So I can tell you that I'm very concerned about anyone who takes an unauthorized removal of a train. But like I said, I think the team has done a really good job of responding to this. One of the things I didn't mention earlier was some efforts that are going into securing the cabs themselves. Cab door locks, an additional lock, which would be coded and keyed so that only individuals who have that specific key would be able to gain entry. So we're taking this very seriously. You know, being someone that worked on the tracks myself, I have a special affinity to employees, and I want to make sure that they come to work and leave in the same manner that they came in. So.
All right, thanks everybody now. Jano, Demetrius, Jay, Kevin, Mike Cortez, Rob Free, and for everything, Catherine Rinaldi.